Well, today we're joined by David Blackburn. David has a storied career at DePauw University with our football team. I want to run through a few of those stats. 4-year starter in the defensive secondary for the Tigers. 4-time All-SCAC conference selection, earned first-team honors in 2001 and 2003. Second-team choice in 2000, 2002. Still holds the program's career record for passes defended, interceptions, and breakups with 50. And is still tied for 11th in school history with 11 career interceptions. Served as team captain for Coach Nick Morosas' final team as head coach, and was selected to the SCAC's 15th anniversary team. And now we add to that an inductee into the DePauw Athletics Hall of Fame. David Blackburn, welcome and congratulations.
Well, thanks for having me, Brad. It's an honor. I really appreciate it.
So how did this come about? How did you learn about it? Did you know you were being nominated? Did you know you were being considered, and who gave you that call?
Well, I didn't know I was being nominated or considered. I got an email from John Stevens, who was on the selection board, and he was actually a teammate of mine. He graduated in 2003. And, you know, my personal email, I get a lot of just random emails and spam and all that stuff. And I was cleaning out my inbox, and I saw John Stevens on there, and it looked like a real email. I said, I think I know a John Stevens. And so I opened it, and, you know, it was him, and he was saying, hey, if you got some time tomorrow, can I give you a call? I promise you, I'm not asking you for money. You know, I just need to speak to you for a little bit. You know, he was calling on DePauw's behalf. I was like, sure. And, you know, he called me and let me know. And I was pretty shocked. That was the last thing I was thinking about at the moment. But it was, you know, it's really an honor, man. I mean, we've had a lot of, you know, I looked up the past couple classes, you know, that have been elected, and, you know, there was some really good athletes that were there during my time that I know did really well in their sport, and they were respected amongst all the athletes on campus. And I'm you know, I'm honored to be, you know, a part of that group now.
That's great. That's great. So let's go back in this first chapter. Let's learn about David Blackburn's early years. So before DePauw, as you're a kid growing up, where did you grow up, and share a little bit about how you first started playing sports?
Well, I'm from Indianapolis, born and raised there on the west side, went to Ben Davis High School. Sports have always just been a part of my life. You know, I got involved in them early. You know, in our household, I'm the oldest of two. I have a younger sister. Sports was always kind of a thing that, you know, you always had to be active in something. You know, my parents, I grew up with both parents. You know, my mom is an educator, and my dad played sports growing up. And so, you know, it was always on in the house. You know, it was just always an interest of mine. And, you know, I started playing baseball and basketball early, and football specifically. I started playing in second grade.
You're growing up in Indianapolis. When did all three sports start around the same time? Second grade, you started playing all three?
I think I started playing, you know, t-ball, you know, before then, baseball, basketball, probably around the same time, maybe a little bit earlier. But all three of those sports were always in rotation.
Okay, so you're a three-sport athlete as a young kid, and you're caught up in athletics, you're following teams, you're loving the game, you're loving the competition. Was there a point you could remember where you started thinking, I might be pretty good at this?
Well, I think I've always been good at sports. I think, you know, once I started playing, you know, I think my interest in sports and my passion about it, you know, made me good, like really good at an early age. You know, when kids are kind of just, you know, they're playing around with it, or some they don't take it as serious as others. So even though I was small, I was a really, really good player, you know, for those levels growing up. And, you know, as I got older, you know, guys started catching up with me just in terms of like their skill and ability. And again, my size became more of an issue. But, you know, I thought I could always compete with people regardless. And, you know, Indianapolis is the biggest city in Indiana, but it's still a small city in terms of like knowing people. And, you know, you'd go against, you would know who some of the better athletes were around the city. And, you know, you would play against those guys, in all sports, whether it was AAU basketball, whether it was, just your football team, baseball. There's a lot of travel teams around, so you play in these tournaments against each other. So you always know who the better athletes were that you were competing against, and you start to earn respect, and or you'll have some mutual friends that that play on their team, or you played with this guy on another team somewhere else in the city. So there was always this kind of there was always this kind of fellowship of athletes. We kind of all knew each other. So through some way, shape, or form. Like, for instance, my roommate for the majority of my time at DePauw was Justin Tillis, and Justin was a damn good athlete in the city of Indianapolis. And we never played with each other, but we knew of each other, a lot, because we both have mutual friends and family members, and so we always heard about. He played for Cathedral when I was playing for Ben Davis, so there was always that 4A, 5A debate, back when Cathedral was rolling then. So, the competition was always good, and I always enjoyed that. And, I always felt like I could compete. And even at Ben Davis High School, that was the biggest high school in the city, in the state, at that time. And it was rare if guys were playing both sides of the ball on the football team, or, it was a pretty, senior driven program, regardless of the sport you were playing. So, playing time wasn't just handed out, and you got what you earned for the most part over there, and it made you, like, going to DePauw was like a step down just in terms of what I was competing against, on my own team, daily. So, I always felt like I could compete, and I always believed in myself, but I knew I wasn't good enough to where I could just show up and beat people. I always had to work at it. I had to have skill and knowledge and all that stuff.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself better in one of the three sports you played? Was there one that, just you gravitated towards, either passion wise or ability wise?
Well, I was probably best in baseball, but I loved football the most. And like baseball, and I would have played it at DePaul, um, but I injured my shoulder my junior year during football practice, and I played through it. But in order to play baseball, I would have had to get surgery after the season, because every time I would throw, my shoulder would kind of slip out of place. So I got the surgery, which meant that I couldn't play basketball my junior year, which, again, I really, really, I loved basketball as well. And, I earned my pathway to going forward, my sophomore year. It was Basketball was probably the most competitive sport, in my high school. Everybody hooped.
That's
Everybody
Indiana.
hooped. And yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the biggest high school, and we had a good program then. And, so it was, again, the competition was stiff, but I had a good sophomore year. And it was always a transition, because all the athletes that came in from football got a late start in the basketball, so we were always playing catch up. And then, but I ended my sophomore year well, and I was looking forward to competing, my junior year. But I had already earned kind of like a starting status. I was going to be a starter in baseball my junior year, so playing baseball was a priority for me. But unfortunately, my rehab didn't go as smoothly as I wanted, and my arm really wasn't healthy enough to play the field. So, my junior year baseball wasn't what I had hoped it to be. I was only kind of limited to designated hitting, duties. But I would say baseball was my best sport, and
Gotcha.
football was my favorite sport.
So you're heading into the senior year. You spent a year recovering, giving up two other passions, two sports that you love, to get ready for, your senior year of the sport that you love. And at that point, whether it was doubt from the injury, you weren't tagged heading into preseason as a starter. Is that
No,
correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I was so I may have not doubted that I could come back strong, but I clearly there was some coaches in our program who doubted that I was going to be able to come back and make a difference. And
How'd you hear about that? How'd you hear
well,
that you were not?
yeah, well, we have so I play for Dick Dullahan, who's a Indiana football high school legend, and he's got these camps called Bishop Dullahan camps, during the summers. And you know, it's a requirement that we go, you know, his team that we go to camp. And, you know, it's like in the early summer, late spring, early summer. And, you know, from how that goes, because we have like 7-on-7s and, you know, teams that are competing with other schools that are bringing teams out there. So, you know, you can kind of get a beat on who they're looking at to be starters going into the year based on, you know, the groups that they send out. And, you know, I came back, I was healthy. I'd been working out. I went to all the off season and stuff. You know, even though I didn't start in baseball, I played, you know, so like I'm back. And, you know, I expected, and I was a backup. I was the number 2 guy, you know, coming out of my junior year, and, you know, the guy ahead of me had already graduated. So I'm like, yeah, well, it's my time. Naturally, I'm going to be in there. And they didn't see it that way. We had a new D coordinator. Well, it was the second year, Tom Allen, who's now the head coach at IU. Uh, you know, he was big on speed, speed, speed. Man, I mean, he, he would have a track team out there if it was up to him. And had our DB coach, he was a track coach. So like, you know, there it was a premium on speed, you know, and I was quicker than I was fast. You know, I wasn't just an outright burner, and plus I wasn't that big and I was a late bloomer. So, I mean, in hindsight, I can understand why they might have been overlooking me, but going through that experience, you know, and running with the twos as a senior, I was like, this is not how it's supposed to end for me. This is not how
And
my career is supposed to come to an end at Ben Davis. So
yeah, and apparently the coaches thought that that was kind of a rebuilding year. If
yeah.
the stories came through correctly, is that you guys were not targeted to do much.
Oh no, man. They were looking ahead to the next year or two after we left. We were a bridge team that was supposed to get them to we had a quarterback named James Banks who was all everything. You know, once his career was over, he ended up going to Tennessee. But, you know, he was a sophomore my senior year, and like so that was a year where maybe they would transition to him and get him some experience, and then after that they had some, you know, more highly touted guys coming in after us. So they were looking at, you know, 1 or 2 years after we had already graduated. You know, our senior class, we won. Our junior high program is broken up into 3 different schools, and I think combined, you know, our class, we had a 5-20 record uh, as far as those ninth grade teams. So we were, and we were all kind of undersized, you know, guys like me, we were all just kind of undersized, but we were tough, scrappy dudes who kind of came through that feeder system over the years, and it all just really clicked. So, you know, going back to that, to the camp story, you know, I was running with the twos and I was furious. I was very, very upset. And my dad picked me up from camp. I think it was over at Anderson University, and he picked me up and he could tell something was wrong because, you know, I was real quiet and, you know, didn't really say much. And you know, we're driving home and I just let loose. I just start venting. I'm just yelling and I'm just like, man, I was over there with the twos. I'm supposed to be a senior this year. I've done everything they've asked me to do. Da 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 da. You know, they put this guy ahead of me. He just got here. You know, like he hasn't earned it. Da da da. He's like, I feel like I'm not even getting a chance to compete for the job. You know, and like I'm a guy when I get really really upset, I get frustrated and I start tearing up, and you know, so I was just. And my dad, he didn't say anything. He just listened. He drove. He kind of took the long route home to let me vent. And then we got to the house, and you know and he looks over to me. He said, "Are you done?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what are you gonna do about it?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm supposed to do. You know, I'm gonna keep going to these workouts and da da da." He's like, "Well, you've done everything they've expected you to do, and that's clearly not enough. So what are you going to do? And what are you willing to do?" I was like, "I'm willing to do anything." You know, when it came test day right before the season started, and I smashed it. You know, I ran faster than some of our faster guys on the team. And, you know, I just really, really opened some eyes that day. Like coaches were coming up to me and telling me that. You know, and I was doing well in practice, and then they put me with the ones, and you know, I still feel like they didn't believe in me, but they felt like I had earned it. And then right before the season has started, usually we have 4 captains, and we had only selected 2 because those were really two of guys that had been starters the previous year. We really didn't have a lot of starters that started the previous year because we just really weren't that talented of a
Yeah,
class.
rebuilding year.
Exactly, whatever, But the Friday practice, the Thursday practice before our Friday game, they called me in the coach's office and they said, we want you to go out and be one of the captains.
What'd that feel like?
you know it was one of the most proud moments that I've had, man.
Pretty clear memory still to this day.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact words that were said, but I do remember that we always had a walkthrough the day before our game in helmets. And, we do our pregame routine. We run around the field, we get in our stretch lines, whatever. We do our, warm up positions and drills and stuff. And we just do a mock game, basically. And again, we only had the two captains, and, the position coach called me in, and the head coach was there, and the defense coordinator was there. And they were like, we want you to go out there and be a captain. You've earned it. We're proud of you. Guys respect you, and so, and that was that. And I was a captain for that team, and we ended up going 15-0 that year and winning state. It was
Heck of a rebuilding year.
Yeah. And I think that season really changed the minds of a lot of those coaches, because again, like, all those guys were similar to me. Like, we came up through the system, we played, we loved it. We knew the history of teams that came before us, and we had a great bond. We all got along and we all played for each other, and we all thought it was our opportunity, and we was kind of like, why not us?
Well, you take a look at the success, and whenever I talk to anybody that knows you from whatever year, talks about hard work and discipline, you're successful because you push through walls and obstacles. So this goes back to that kind of fight, nature, nurture. Is that passion and that drive in you something that's just genetic, that you just feel you're wired that way to chase things at a higher level? Or is it something that's taught by your parents, by your teachers and coaches, or the fact that you were undersized growing up, and so you had to work a little bit harder than other people? Where do you think the major drive for your success and accomplishments has come from?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I think we're all kind of, predisposed to have certain behaviors, when we're born, our unique personalities and things that are drivers, but, that's cultivated, over time. And, my parents, again, I can't emphasize it enough how much of an impact they've had, first of all, by just being there, and seeing them, and not only just like seeing them as people, whether it's just my mom getting up, going to work every day, teaching for 40 plus years, and, IPS, Indianapolis Public School System, never missing a day really, or my dad, going through adversity where, he got laid off during 9/11, after post 9/11, when he was working for US Airways, and then, going through that, but still being home and being involved and caring about his kids. And, then you see the ups and downs of marriage, and you see them working through, the ups and downs and being there for each other. And, and you learn, the more things I was involved in, the more you learn about yourself, and you learn what it takes to be successful. You learn about hard work, you learn about dedication, you learn about pushing through adversity, you learn about sacrifice, and, you learn about being selfless and doing things that's best for the collective. You learn about you're only going to get as much as you put in, and I think a lot of people, and a lot of young people, and I see it a lot, man. I see it where, I go around to these schools, these colleges, and, talk to these coaches about these different kids. And, a lot of these kids have to overcome so much just to get to the baseline, to be able to come in with the things that I had, just in terms of, the makeup, the intangibles, the inner drive and the discipline, and, having those tools. It's just a matter of being able to execute. They've had to overcome so much, just to get to that point. So, maybe they don't know about teamwork. Maybe they don't know about discipline. Maybe they don't they haven't been held accountable enough to understand that one thing affects the other. It's not always just about ball. It ain't always about just how good you are. It's about treating people right. It's about working hard. It's about doing things when nobody's watching. And, I think I was able to understand that and get it at an early age, you know, um, doing the things academically, to make sure that I was allowed to do the things that I loved. I didn't love school, but I knew I had to do well in it to do the things that I loved. And, my parents just instilled that in me. And, it's once it's in you, it doesn't leave. It doesn't change. As you know, man, I mean, like when you're adult, nothing changes. You got things that you don't like to do. There's things about your job that you don't like. I mean, I don't love everything about my job, but I do know that I have to do certain things in order to do what I do at a high level. And sometimes I'll have to sacrifice things, or some things I'll have to, really go through things that I really don't want to go through, or that's not easy, or it's not convenient. But I do know for a fact, if I do it, I'm gonna be able to, to do my job at a high level.
Yeah, so you talk a little bit about how, when you're talking to kids these days, everybody's got a different backstory. Everybody comes from different places, and not everybody's starting at the same spot. The activities you were involved in growing up, there wasn't much diversity. How conscious were you of that, and how much did it affect you day to day?
Yeah, I mean, the most diverse things I did were sports, but a lot of the times, whether it's if I'm singing in a choir, if I'm in the band, if I'm in school and I'm in all the honors or advanced classes, you look around and you're not represented very well in those spaces. There's plenty of times where I've been, the only minority in my class. I've been the only black person in my band or choir. You know what I'm saying? So like, the elementary school I went to, was majority white, by a lot. So, you know, and DePauw. So I feel like when I was in those spaces, I took note. I saw that my parents helped me understand it, but I was able to have the confidence in being who I am without necessarily being what's common, So I never really, I was aware of it and I became more aware of it, but it didn't stop me from doing what I do. You just take it for what it is. You notice it, you take note of it, and you understand why, but you can't let it affect, who you are. So like when I got to DePaul, one of the things, you know, I had, several choices. I considered Howard and some other places, and DePaul. Probably if my mom didn't go to DePaul, I probably wouldn't have went to DePaul because I wouldn't have probably applied to it. I wouldn't have known about it. But the thing that I liked about DePaul, outside of its academics and the chance to play ball and set myself up, after college, was the fact that I felt like, I was going to be able to further advance my ability to navigate in these spaces where I'm the minority, and know how to handle that, without losing my identity, without losing the sense of who I am, what's important to me, what matters to me, speaking speaking truths on things that people may not necessarily be ready to hear, or they haven't been exposed to certain things, just kind of being strong in who I am and not marginalize myself or dimming my light, because of, I'm too conscious of, I'm trying to fit in, or I don't want to ruffle too many feathers. And a lot of the times I saw, once people get to know you, who you are and what you're about, they'll respect you regardless of how different you are, what conflicting opinions or ideologies you may have.
You talked about being the only minority in some groups, and your parents helped you understand that. So I'm assuming there were some conversations. Do you remember any of those points? You remember anything in discussing this with your parents, advice or thoughts that they shared with you?
Well, I think, when you're an involved parent, you see things that happen to your child, or you're aware of things, environments or situations that maybe as a kid you specifically don't understand, or you don't see, or you don't recognize, right? So there were numerous times where, either my mom or my dad would see something, hear something, or get a report about something, and they would intervene and feel like they had to, stand up for me, or, either call out a teacher or check a parent, or what I'm saying, um, to kind of like put that to rest. Like, no, you're not going to treat him like this, or he's not that, or you're wrong on this, or don't think that you can just talk to this black boy anyway, so they were always very, they were protective, and they were involved parents, and they wanted to make sure that I was given a fair shot at life, and whenever they saw situations where I wasn't being given that based on who I was or what I looked like, they stepped in, and then they would explain it to me, in a manner that's appropriate for whatever age I was at. They would try to explain, why this happened. Well, this is why this teacher accused you of taking this. This is why, you're not allowed to stay at this kid's house overnight. Things like that. And once you hear that and you start to understand the realities of life, it it kind of makes you more proud of who you are, because you're being built up at home about, like, you're not made to feel ashamed of that. And so there was always a sense of self-love and self-pride in my house. And and that was a part of, like, self-education. And I think you're seeing that, now with these times, with the social justice movement, and racial inequality and systemic racism, and implicit biases, that people really just don't know what they do, or they don't understand what's going on out there, just themselves. So, you know knowing like the role of black people in this country, and having knowledge of self, like, that was always important. And when you're armed with that, and what's to be true, it gives you more confidence to be able to kind of understand things, and be able to succeed, or be able to help change some minds as well, because you're able to educate.
Awesome. Awesome. We're going to move on to the next chapter. Going to move on to your life at DePauw. How much do you remember about that transition? You're excited because you're coming in. It's a new environment, new school, football team. You're starting before school starts. Do you remember those moments? And what are some of those memories from your first footsteps on campus?
Just excitement, just knowing that you are entering a new phase of your life. You're starting to grow into some independence, living away from home, living on your own. Excuse me. Just a new environment. um my freshman year, I stayed at Holgate, and actually my mom lived in Holgate when she was on campus. So, like, I was just like, that's bizarre. But it wasn't made as daunting as it might be for some, just because I had that solid baseline of teammates that were there. Because, again, we came on campus before all the freshmen reported. We had already been practicing. you know I moved in with Justin Tillis, who I mentioned before, and, like, we were fast friends. And another guy named Daryl Smith. I mean, like, he had a car. We met him. He was our teammate. We met him. He had a car. He was Mr. Outgoing. And next thing you know, you look up and you got two best friends right off the top. And so, like, that made everything easy. And then again, all the relationships you had with your teammates. So, I felt like there was a fraternity already built. And that's what Coach Nick always said, that, DePaul football, you're your own fraternity, baby. So, like, I already had that baseline of friends and people that I felt comfortable with. But, I think I struggled most academically. That was probably the most challenging, was just, school, and having to adjust academically.
So talk to me about some of those academic struggles. You say that it was a little different than coming out of high school, and you didn't get off on the academic foothold that you wanted. What were some of those struggles, and how did that impact you?
yeah, well, like I said, in high school, school was easy. It came easy. I did the work, and I stayed on top of things, and it just kind of came naturally. For whatever reason, at DePaul, it was more of a challenge. And I came in a part of the Management Fellows program, which required that you maintain a 3.0 GPA in order to stay in the program, and then also to stay on my scholarship, which I had. My scholarship came through. It was the Grady Scholarship coming through their program. So when I got there, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. You know, I had a I was thinking communications, just because I guess that's what you do at college. You major in communications. So I took an intro to comm class. I had an intro to philosophy class, and a few other things. And whether it was just the subject, or just uh, my youth, my inexperience, being a college student, it just didn't mesh. It didn't work that first semester, and I got a rude awakening by my standards. You know, it wasn't like I did terrible, but I didn't do well by my standards. And so I just kind of had to relearn how to study, you know, relearn what was required in order for me to have success. What did I need to do in order to do well in these classes?
So you mentioned how this affected your confidence a little bit. You're a 4-year starter on the football team. Did it spill over onto the field, or were you able to separate those two worlds?
No, I was able to separate it, you know, pretty easily. You know, I mean, because like at the end of the football, that was the one area where I was having success and having it early, where I'm coming from a place where I'm competing against the best in the state to just have a shot my senior year to coming in and starting my freshman year and being a 4-time all conference player, you know what I'm saying? So like that part was the easy part. You know, I just needed to get an opportunity. You know, I came in my freshman year and I had a groin injury from training. And so like I kind of had to, you know, I was like third team when I came in. There were some people above me and I really wasn't able to kind of just jump in and compete the way I wanted to. But like, you know, Justin Tillis, he came in and he started day one as a freshman, you know, so like I got that. I'm living with him every day and he's starting, you know, out the gate. And here I am, I'm trying to recover. I'm looking at the people ahead of me and I'm like, you know, I'm better than him or I can beat him out or whatever. And, you know, I just kind of, it started over again initially where I was like, man, I'm just like, I feel like I'm not even really being looked at. I know I was hurt, but like I'm about to be better. And, you know, when I come back, I really want this opportunity. And, you know, it didn't happen like right away. And I remember I went to Coach Hill. We had a scrimmage. We were having a scrimmage against Butler, I think, coming up. And I told him, I said, look, man, I said, you know I've been hurt and I haven't practiced as much as everybody and I'm just not getting back and I'm late. I said, but I guarantee you I'm better than these 3 dudes you got above me right now. I said, like, I just need an opportunity. Just give me a chance, you know, put me in for a series and I said, if I mess up, I won't talk to you ever again. You know, my whole 4-year career, man, I won't say anything, but you know, I need a shot because, you know, I know what I'm capable of. And I think like my past experience at Ben Davis, you know, gave me the confidence to say that and put it out there. And I was able to back it up.
So when you first heard that you were going to be in that game, and it comes on the heels of you talking to Coach Hill and saying, just give me a shot. So you ask for it, you earn it, you get it. Now you got to back it up because you put it on the table and said, look, give me the shot or I'm not talking. I won't, if I don't perform, I don't bring it up again. How much nerves, how much anxiety do you have going in because of what you said ahead of time about just give me that chance? And now he does, and it's your turn to prove it. Any anxiety, any nerves in that moment?
Nah, man, because you're prepared, right? You're as prepared as you're going to be. You know, yeah, you'll have your nerves just like anybody, but you know, you don't go making those statements without having, you know, the ability to back it up or putting in the work to know that you're good enough to back the words up. You know, I mean, yeah, you're gonna make mistakes or, you know, a corner, you're gonna get beat. I mean, it happens, that's the game, but like, you know, I'm gonna make a heck of a lot more plays than I'm gonna give up, you know, and then when I do give something up, I'm gonna shake it off and I'm gonna line it back up the next play. I think that's just the mentality that you have. And again, like, you know, just like in the classroom with the story with Mary English, is like, you know, when you're not doing enough or you know when you're doing what you're supposed to do to have the success. It's another thing to put in the work, be prepared, you know, in the classroom, study, know the material, have confidence that you're going to succeed on that test or that paper. Or in athletics, you know, you've been busting your butt, you've been watching tape, you had a good week of practice, you're training right, you know, you're ready. So, you know, it's just like, how prepared are you when your moment comes? You never know when it's going to come.
Okay, we're moving into chapter 3, and we've touched on a few things here. I've tried to stay away from it because it's so cool that it would dominate the conversation. Tell us what you do now.
Yeah, so I'm currently the national scout for the Baltimore Ravens. What that means is just I grade or I evaluate collegiate draft eligible players across the country for the NFL draft. Um, Prior to that, I was the West Coast area scout, basically doing the same job, but then in a smaller area. So I live out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've lived out here for 7 years now, and I've been with Baltimore since 2007.
So does every team have that? You've got a West Coast scout, an East Coast scout, and then a national scout?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, for the most part, most teams are the same, and just in terms of how they divvy out the work and how they assign areas for guys. But
So you
yeah,
have to be pretty good at the West Coast scout to move up to national. What are some of the accomplishments you had in that first position that, maybe the biggest guy that you were correct on that helped you move up to be the national scout?
I think it's just a culmination of work. I don't think you point to any like one particular guy. Again, a course of an evaluation cycle. you know you have opinions on hundreds of players. So like you're going to be right and you're going to be wrong. All we're doing is just we're guessing. We're just taking educated guesses on what these prospects are going to be as pros. And I think what you end up getting evaluated on is your consistency. you know does he do the work? Does he get the information? Do I trust what he tells me? you know Now, do I listen to that? That's a whole nother game. That's a whole other ball game. Again, probably the biggest thing that you have to learn to deal with in the position that I'm in, especially as an area scout, is the disappointment of maybe not being listened to, or taking a player that maybe you're not that high on, or because again, like by the end of the day, there's so many voices, or there's so many opinions that uh, that determine whether or not we draft a player, that you're kind of the farthest removed from it. And that's fine. That's the way it is. But again, you got to know your role in this whole thing. Your role is to go out there, and lay the initial look on these players in your building. Placing him in a spot where you think is the best place for him to start for this process. And when people ask you questions about, how much does he love ball? Is he tough? Is he smart? Is he going to work at it? What type of person is he going to be in the community, in the locker room? Is he going to fight through injuries? How big of a playmaker is he? How is he going to handle adversity? Like all the things we've been talking about, how he's going to be able to deal with that. Are there examples of that? Like those are the things that you're digging on to try to find out about, what's the substance of these players? What is the core of this dude? What is he made of? Like when we go through a world pandemic and half our team is, on COVID reserve, what's this person how's he gonna respond? Is he gonna be like, well, forget it, we're not gonna beat Pittsburgh next week, we don't have half our team? Or is he gonna be a guy that's gonna try to rally the troops and, be a leader out there? Or is he a guy who's gonna be taken off practice squad and given a chance to play, due to circumstance, that given an opportunity to play that he wouldn't have ever had at this point, and make the most of it. Like those are the types of guys we're looking for. So like I think like the consistency that you have in doing that, you build a reputation and you build a trust, and there's an expectation, and that's kind of how you move up. It's not really a one person or one player example.
So when you look at your life's journey and all of the different pieces of it, from being undersized as a kid and having to play harder than other kids, from injuries, being told you're a backup, to all of these experiences, how much has that prepared you for this role that you've got right now?
Well, I think it's just prepared me. All those things have really just prepared me to, you know, be able to do the job in the things that come with it. And it's more like your mentality, or your mental toughness. Um, you this job isn't for everybody. It sounds cool. It sounds so cool.
It does.
Yeah. And a lot of people, again, when you tell people I get paid to watch football, they're like, "Oh my God, that's a dream job." I'm like, "Yeah, but if you knew what goes into it, you'd be like, man, I'd rather do something else." Because again, this isn't for everybody. And when you're able to understand that and accept all the less glamorous things that come with a job that people think is so awesome, you know, you're fine. But you have to have that expectation and willingly, happily go through it and do it.
in order to enjoy the fruits, the Super Bowls and all that stuff, but like it, again, if I truly wanted a dream job, I'd be good enough to play in the NFL, but I'm not, So again, the way that I can still be a part of this game at this level is through this way that I'm in right now. And again, that requires a certain amount of work, travel, effort, typing, time away from family, whatever the case is. But that's the sacrifice that you make individually to have this opportunity that a lot of people would kill for.
Yeah, and you got to have a family that's supportive of it. I mean, you got to have that
Absolutely.
foundation at home.
Absolutely. And again, there's so much sacrifice as far as like my wife and, having to, be alone with the kids and, all of that. And so knowing what she does to support you, you have to be mindful about being present when you're home. So, you gotta make time. You gotta make sure you do X amount of work while you're gone in order to be home and not just be buried in your office. She's like, what's the point of being home if you're gonna just be in your office all the time? And she does a good job of, keeping me on point and scheduled and be like, hey, we got this, we're doing that, and I need you for this. I'm like, okay. So, it's definitely a team effort, but you gotta be willing to do your role on the team.
Love it. Love it. So now you don't graduate from DePauw and wind up walking into Baltimore and getting a job with the Ravens. What's that path?
Yeah.
What was your path from graduation day to where you're sitting right now?
Well, it definitely wasn't a straight line. I knew before graduation what I wanted to do. And I remember, you know, DePaul has had several guys graduate that work in the league. There's like three or four other guys, that played football at DePaul that are working personnel. There's also a couple coaches as well. One of the guys that currently works in the league, his name is Joe Shane. He was a senior when I was a freshman. And, on the website, the DePaul homepage where they got the links to alum in the news. And I remember it was probably I think it was the first semester my senior year. And I saw his name. It said Joe Shane hired by the Panthers. And I clicked it. I said, dang, you know, that sounds like a really cool job. That's what I want to do, because I always had wanted to work, in sports and in the NFL and personnel. And, reading that, I was just like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And so, I talked to him. I talked to Pat Roberts, who's also an alum. Coach Nick was really, really helpful. Without him, I'm probably not working in the league. Uh, so like he contacted people and I made some connections and, networked with. Nothing materialized by, graduation. And so I was just living at home in Indy with my parents for about, I didn't work for like 3 or 4 months just to kind of just take it off and recharge. Like nothing happened. And I'm like, well, I don't know how realistic that is, so I need to get a job. So I got a job working in financial sales and I hated it. I hated everything about it. It was not me at all. I was miserable. And, but during that time, I had gotten an interview with the Cleveland Browns, and it was basically it was like a personal assistant to the head coach. So kind of like his body man, and, the coach that got hired, it was Romeo Crennel. He just got hired. I didn't get that job. And then 3 months later, I got a phone interview to be like an entry level scout there. And I didn't get that. And the thing that stung with me was that they called me. So for the second interview, they called me and they wanted me to be on a plane like that night. And I was like somewhere in Southern Indiana on a sales call. And I was just like, I can't get out, man. I got this appointment set up and, I don't think I can get back and I can't just up and leave my employer hanging, like I kind of got some things. I can't just drop everything and go. And the guy sounded disappointed. He was like, David, like you gotta get on this, man. I mean, like, we'll set a phone interview up, I guess, but hey, like you gotta think to yourself, is this what you're really trying to do? And I thought about it and I was like, man, you're right. So after that job interview, I didn't get it. And I said, of course. I said, but you know what? I'm gonna get the next one. So I quit my job, and I said, I'm gonna try to find something in sports to work in. So I'm gonna be a better candidate, the next time an opportunity comes. So I quit my job. I got a job working as a permanent substitute teacher at the Ben Davis Ninth Grade Center. I I became a graduate assistant at Butler University. That's where my old defensive coordinator was the D coordinator there now, and the head coach was a DePauw is a DePauw alum. So I got a job there as a defensive backs coach, graduate assistant, and then I worked at FedEx at night from like 1 to 4, or 12 to 4 at the sorting plant over at the airport.
Ever get close to giving up on the dream?
No, there was nights where I got frustrated. When you're in a FedEx can stacking boxes, in December, during Christmas, and it's freezing, and you're like, how much did I spend on a DePauw education? How much was that a semester? And this is what I'm doing. But it's a process. Like, I wasn't just in there because I was down on my luck and that was all I had. I was doing it because I had a plan. My plan was to work in football. And, in order for me to have some money in my pocket and have some benefits and to be able to pursue that dream, that came with it. And so, yeah, you're going to have your days where you're pissed off and you're frustrated and you don't want to go through it. Yeah, no. I mean, my days were, I'd go to the ninth grade center, I'd be there all day. I'd go to Butler, coach. If I had a class that evening, I'd go to class. If I didn't, I'd come home, get something to eat, take a nap, go to sleep. It was basically like a nap. You only had several hours to take. Get up, go to FedEx, work about 3-4 hours. Then I'd go to the gym. The gym would open up at like 5, so I'd be in the parking lot. It'd be like 4:30 in the morning. So I'm like dozed off in front of Cardinal Fitness waiting for it to open, and they open. I go and I get my workout in, and I go home, get cleaned up, get dressed for school, and start all over again. So like that was like a year and a half of doing that. And yeah, you're not gonna be upbeat every day that you do that, but you got to have a plan. You know what you want to do. And again, if it was easy, everybody'd be working in the NFL. This is just your plan. And those are the type of stories that, they looked for. I told that story, in my interview, and those are the type of stories that we look for in the players that we draft. What kind of adversity have you gone through? What kind of grit do you have? What have you gone through to show that you really love ball? Have you gone the extra mile? What have you overcome in order to be the player that you are? Or what have you overcome to, be in this chair in front of me to interview? Like, who are you? And I feel like, that's kind of who I am, and that's who I was at that time. And, it wasn't an accident, like, again, those were lifetime of experiences that made me okay with doing that, because it was more of I'm doing this to help me get to here, not I have to do this. Golly, this is a drag. You know what I mean?
Good. Well, moving on to chapter 4, and we touched on this a little bit earlier. Your thoughts on Coach Nick? As you know, your college coach has recently passed away. Any memories, any thoughts that you want to share on your time with him?
Just gratitude. I felt special with Coach Nick just because we were his last senior class that he coached. I played in his last Bell game. I always felt like I had a great relationship, a special relationship with him. And I'm sure a lot of guys feel the same way because he made you feel that way. I do know specifically that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, and I wouldn't be working where I'm working without him. That's just a fact. I wouldn't. He's a guy who went out of his way to try to help me, and he did. I feel like he's a guy that believed in me, and he was always a person that was willing to help, lend a helping hand to those who deserved it or wanted it. And like, I just feel like he really, really loved the program. He loved the school, and he loved his players, and he loved his family. I mean, I think that's probably the one thing he loved more than all of us was his family. and, you know, they treated us like family. And, you know, my thoughts go out to Maryland, you know, and his family and his kids, his son and daughter, going through this. And I wish, you know, last time I was on campus was for the Young Alumni Award, and I was hoping to see him, but I think he had a grandchild that was graduating, so he was out of town, and I was looking forward to coming back to campus to see him because I hadn't seen him in a little bit. And, you know, he was a guy that, you know, you always, man, I got to go give Coach Nick a call. You know, I got to talk to Coach Nick, and I never really got around to doing it, you know, and then you hear that he was in the, you know, the hospital, and he was recovering from COVID. And, you know, he was already, you know, recovering from a stroke that he had, you know, a few years back. And, you know, so there's regret there. But the good thing that, you know, is that, you know, he loved you, and you know that he knew that you loved him. And, you know, that's how his heart was. Like he always said, I'm Greek. You know, I wear my emotions on my sleeve. You're going to know how I feel. You know, I'm a passionate dude. So, you know, he loved his players, and we all loved him. And, you know, DePauw, I know, misses him greatly.
Last question I got for you. You know, when you look back at all your experiences, and if you had the chance to pull a young David aside and give him some advice, what age David would you pick, and what advice would you give him?
Man, that's a tough one.
This isn't easy, David. This is some tough stuff.
No, you know, you hear people get asked that question a lot. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'd go tell the person that I tell my old self." You know, I really don't know what I would tell them. I would, you know, maybe I would just encourage him, you know, in different moments that, you know, he was facing some tough times, or what he thought was tough times. You know, just really keep going, keep pushing. You know, there's light at the end of this tunnel. You don't know what you're capable of. You know, you are capable of a lot. You know, your potential is great. You know, just keep going. Don't stop. Don't quit.
David Blackburn, I want to thank you for the time today and for sharing your journey. And again, congratulate you on your induction into the DePauw Athletic Hall of Fame.
This has been great, man. I'm humbled, and I'm really happy, man, to join the Hall of Fame at DePauw. Really thank you for having me, those insightful questions, and talking to the people in my life. And so, but thanks a lot, Brad. This has been awesome, man.
You're welcome. Pleasure to meet you. Go Ravens.